Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an all-new edition of Artsbeat TV and radio here on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15, 89.5 FM WSKB, and our media partners at Agawam Media, Southwick Community Programming. I'm your host, Mark Auerbach, and today we have a group of people involved in a very special music theater project that's coming to Greenfield High School on May 21st. It is the music piece called Considering Matthew Shepard. 25 years ago, Matthew Shepard was a young college student at the University of Wyoming in Laramie who was brutally robbed, beaten, and murdered. And it was a hate crime that shocked the nation, and it was a crime that caused many people to reimagine and rethink human rights and dignity, and its impact has been felt for 25 years. Shortly after Matthew Shepard was murdered, the Tectonic Theater Company in New York sent a group of actors to Laramie, Wyoming, to interview the townspeople about their reactions to the murder, and they followed them through the course of the trial of the two young men that beat and robbed and killed Matthew Shepard. It was turned into a play, which was then turned into a television special, which then prompted another play called The Laramie Project 10 years after, where they went back 10 years later to re-interview some of the same people. And it prompted a bunch of other music and theatrical responses. Craig Hallett-Johnson, who's with us this morning, created an oratorio, classical music format to consider Matthew Shepard using texts from many different sources, including those of our area poet and author Leslea Newman, who has a personal history and story revolving Matthew Shepard. So DeCamera Singers, with Shiela Heffernon is the director of, had planned to produce this production, which is a Grammy-nominated music piece, before the pandemic. And finally, it's coming to fruition May 21st. So I'm glad to introduce you to all of those people. And I have to say, in a moment of transparency, that I am involved in this production as one of the narrators, which I am thrilled and honored to do and have the opportunity to return to the stage. So good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Craig, well, let's start with you. What prompted you to write Considering Matthew Shepard? And you use a variety of musical styles, from country western to classical music to a little bit of musical theater. What made you want to do this?
Well, I, like so many people around the globe, ultimately, I was very impacted by the news first of Matthew's beating in October of 1998, and then ultimately his death and all that followed. I was rehearsing in San Francisco with a group called Chanticleer at the time when I first heard about it, and I often think about that moment when I first learned from one of the singers who came to me in tears and shared this, what he had just heard on the news with me, and it just really pierced my heart incredibly at that moment. And for first weeks and then months and ultimately years after that, I carried a sense of really wanting to respond. It kind of struck a place in me as a gay man, and for all kinds of reasons, but just that really had rocked my world and unsettled me deeply. So I wanted to respond. I felt the sadness of that, the anger in that, just 1,000 emotions. And yeah, it was very clear at some point I want to respond. It took me a long, long time, actually, and I kept trying to avoid it for years, actually. And finally, some 12, 14 years later, I guess I finally said, I need to do this. It keeps knocking at my door. And so I felt really kind of a calling internally to do it. I did it in a way for myself so that I could work through this. The group I work with, Conspirari, premiered it, and I had the sense that this might be a premiere performance, and then it would just have been a heart project, and that was the end of it. But it's had quite a life since then, and been honored to be associated with Matt, the story, and his family, and of course with Leslea, whose words are so at the core of this piece.
You went to a lot of sources for both your music and also your libretto. What made you choose the libretto and the various pieces that you set to music in this?
Well, when I began, I just was in the place of wanting to be just listening in that creative way of what is needed for the story to be told, for this story to be told in the way that I was wanting to express it, not just about Matt, but ultimately about all of us in terms of how we relate to one another, how we care for one another or don't. And so, I mean, it's sort of a bit of how I've worked with a few concerts, these collage type programs, but it was in that spirit of wanting to be very kind of broad-based and ecumenical, use a lot of stories representing uh, different perspectives, different peoples. So, I mean, very early on, I had just begun to think about the fence and sort of the fence itself as this sort of objective witness and I was pondering it, and I was sort of making a few initial sketches. It was just, I knew I wanted to do something with the fence, but it was very unformed. And I happened, in quotes, miraculously to discover Leslea's beautiful book, October Morning. And this really, these became the fundamental, kind of foundational pieces of these pieces of the fence of hers. It's brilliant, and so it really sets the cornerstone, the foundation in place. And then from that, I was kind of looking to different voices, some historical, Hildegard von Bingen, Blake, Rumi. A friend of mine, Michael Dennis Brown, worked on texts with me for places for which there was a dramatic need or a hole that I wanted to fill. Yeah, I was interested in sort of with all the musical styles and diverse texts, kind of creating a big tent, where many styles, many voices were represented, sort of symbolically. So that's what my own operating mode was for that.
Leslea, how did you have a connection to Matthew Shepard? And could you tell us, and you've explained this to me, and we did another program together where we talked about it a little bit, but can you explain the connection and what prompted you to write this book of poetry, which inspired the libretto for considering Matthew Shepard?
So in the spring of 1998, I was invited to be the keynote speaker for the University of Wyoming's Gay Awareness Week by their LGBTQ association, and Matt was a member of that association and part of the planning committee for the week, and part of the planning committee who made the decision to bring me. And so in October, before I got on the plane, his friend Jim Osborne called to tell me what had happened to his friend Matt and asked me if I would still wanted to come. And I said, of course, I think I need to be there, more than ever. So I flew out there, and I remember very clearly the students still wanted me to give my presentation, which was a talk called Heather's Mommy Speaks Out, Homophobia, Censorship, and Family Values. And the LGBTQ association students all sat in the front row, and they left one empty seat. And I just kept thinking Matt would be sitting there. So I never got a chance to meet him. He died the morning that I flew out there, but because of him, I have met thousands of people, and which is incredible. And so on the way home, actually, flying home, I started writing an essay, which became the afterword of the book, because I made a commitment to his friends and his teachers. I hadn't yet met his family, that I would do all I could to keep his memory and legacy alive and keep putting his name out there. So that is why I wrote the book. And I started the book with poems from the fence's point of view, because like Craig, I had that same feeling that the fence was an innocent bystander. And the fence had a life of its own before it was really rooked into participating in this crime, not of its own free will. I know, and that might sound a little out there, but this is the way poets think. So I started with writing from the fence's point of view, and from there, I decided there must have been other witnesses, so I wrote a poem from the moon's point of view and from a deer's point of view, and then just like Craig, the work just got bigger and bigger and bigger until it became a full-length book of poetry called October Morning, a song for Matthew Shepard.
I had the opportunity to read that when I went to Wyoming in March. I have a friend who went to and graduated University of Wyoming who agreed to show me the places in Laramie where all of the murder and the trial and everything took place. And I knew at that point that I'd be part of this project. And being out there at that fence in the middle of nowhere in the prairie, and one of the things you talk about are the stars and the wind and all of that. It's an amazing, it is so desolate, but at the same time, there's so many elements there, and getting a chance to read your poems, knowing the story and having a personal connection and everything, that was really a catalyst to me in terms of the importance of bringing this kind of a project to the stage. Shiela, what made you, as the head of DeCamera Singers, choose this particular piece?
First, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Craig, for being here, and it's very nice to meet you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Shiela.
And Leslea, of course, we've had a chance to connect. These are two really so significant people. I had been part of the Laramie Project. I taught for many, many years at a high school, and we did it a number of times. And so I had been that way, and I really found that to be profound and an amazing work. And as the years went by, when I would return to it, because we would do it every 4 or 5 years, for me, not to take away from that remarkable production, but it was hard to get past that to a healing place. And the first time I heard a section from Craig Hella-Johnson's piece, I was stunned. I was just, it grabbed me, and it was one of the, it was Movement 28, which is an amazing piece, which really, in my personal interpretation, is Matt's soul finding its way to wherever it's going to go. It's just so beautiful. So I sat down, found it on YouTube, and did, close my door, wouldn't let anybody interrupt, and saw the entire performance. And it was so gripping and amazing, and I was in tears, and I was angry, and I felt so many emotions, and came to the end of it and felt there was a way towards healing, there was a way towards communication. So then I decided it had to be done, and I discovered that it has never been done in Western Massachusetts. And so we set out to try to do a performance. And we got shut down during the pandemic. It was March 11th in 2020. And we got together, and this was even before the world shut down. We realized as singers, probably it was not going to be a wise idea to continue. So we, as a group, shut down. And the last thing we sang before we all parted, which we were not back together again for another 1.5 years, was Meet Me Here, which is just a beautiful hymn about community and connection. So we waited until the world opened up, and we felt we could be really truly together, singing together, not just 12 feet apart. And we decided, particularly this year, next October will be the 25th anniversary of Matt's murder, and we felt this was the time to do it. And at that point, also excited because we realized Leslea lives in our backyard. And she was very, very gracious in terms of becoming a part of the project for us, and has been really instrumental in helping us. She did a presentation that was open to anybody. Many of the singers were there, and it was just transformative for them to begin to connect with the text in such a personal way.
And I've got to add my connection to it. In 1998, the weekend that Matthew Shepard was beaten, I had been working part-time for AOL, a Community Leaders Program, in the LGBTQ area. And we had a group of community leaders that were trained to do coming out support and other programs. And every quarter, one of the hosts, like myself, would gather the other 20 people in a place to meet for the weekend. And I chose Northampton. First of all, it's my own backyard. Second of all, Northampton has always been an open and affirming town. Not much earlier than the time that the Matthew Shepard murder took place, 2020, the ABC program profiled Northampton and its lesbian and gay population. And so I brought a group of people from all over the country together. It was Columbus Day weekend. It was fall foliage. We were going to do a little bit of meeting and have a great time, going cidering and all of the stuff that we all do in New England. And this news story hit, and the impact that it had on the people that I was with, it stayed with me for 25 years. So I feel, as a member of the media and as a person in the arts, to be able to tell a story like this, so that in the other areas that I've covered where you say to people, don't let history repeat itself and never forget, we have this opportunity to present the story of a young man who did nothing wrong, who just wandered into a bar and was trusting and caring and just got in the wrong place at the wrong time. And his story resonates to anybody who is discovering themselves, discovering the world, and things. We can't allow things like this to go wrong. Again, once was enough. So that said, we're going to take a quick break to acknowledge our underwriters, and we will be back with more Artsbeat here on Westfield Community Programming and 89.5 FM WSKB. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. Don't go away.
Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
Listen to me, Michael Buster McMahon, Mondays 8 to 10 a.m. to learn the stories behind your favorite songs. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. If you've missed a part of today's programming, or you want to watch it again or share it with friends, we hope that you will. It's archived on YouTube under WSKB Community Radio. We're talking about the DeCamera Singers production of Considering Matthew Shepard by Craig Hellett Johnson, which will be performed on May 21st at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at Greenfield High School in Greenfield. And it is free to the public, and no tickets are required. And we hope that you'll have the opportunity to attend. This particular music program, Considering Matthew Shepard, went right to number 4 on Billboard's traditional classic chart after Harmonia Mundi released the 2-CD set in September of 2016. It has been performed all over the country, and this is your first opportunity to see it in Western Massachusetts. Craig Hellett Johnson is the composer. Leslea Newman is the author. She's Western Mass based, and she's an author of many books, and she was probably the most famous for a children's book called Heather Has Two Mommies. And she's written fiction, nonfiction. She has a new children's book which has a babka in the title. And Shiela Heffernon is the music director for DeCamera Singers and has been very much involved in the choral music programs throughout Western Massachusetts. So it's really great to have the three of you here.
Pleasure to be here with you all.
Yeah. Craig, have you been able to go see many productions of this once you premiered it?
Let's see. That's an interesting question. To see them, I've been involved in a lot because I've been asked to come and conduct many performances, and I've probably seen two. So yes, anyway, but I've been involved or around many performances. It's been a really rich journey for sure.
Has it changed? Have you revised it or since it first premiered, or is it pretty much an intact piece?
It's mostly intact. There is small things that have changed. I might sort of take out a repeat in a musical section or kind of alter a tempo a little bit. And I've shortened a couple of things just over time. There's one text that we've had to change out. But, for the most part, it's really substantially just intact as the piece that I originally composed.
And when you were developing or composing it, and you're working with all of these sources for your libretto, for example, did you and Leslea, did you collaborate, and did you change perhaps a word or two in your libretto to make it better musically, or did you basically take what Leslea had written and just turn it into music?
Yeah, pretty much with Leslea, as they were just gorgeous. There might have been, I have to actually think, it's not totally fresh now, but there might have been one poem that we just simply didn't use two lines of, if I'm recalling. But other than just a small sort of removal of something, it was, pretty much just her words. And that's unusual. But I just loved them so much, I didn't really want to mess with them. And I sense, we could have been open to that conversation too, but I just really loved what was there and decided to kind of work around the shape and the form of those. They all were very musically depictive also. They're very kind of illustrative. They just gave me great ideas. So we had great conversations. I actually kind of was into this project a little ways, started to write some music before I talked both to Leslea and also to Judy Shepard. So there were kind of two big things that could have halted this progress. I hadn't written music yet to Leslea's, but I really, really wanted to. And so I'd written some other music, but I was definitely on my way, and this conception had her poems in mind. And so it could have been a great derailing had she said, no permission. And so I'm grateful. And with Judy, it was interesting because I was quite a ways along. I had already spoken with Leslea by that time, and I knew I needed to visit with the family and just, from a legal standpoint, I probably could have just done my thing without connecting, but it's not what I wanted at all. I wanted their sort of blessing. And it was a Hafiz poem that translated by Daniel Ladinsky that I had shared with her. We were having a little drink at this place in Austin, Dennis and Judy and I, and a wonderful filmmaker friend of Judy and Dennis's and also of ours, Leslea and me, Michelle Josue, and who had kind of arranged for us to get together. But that was a very moving moment for me because Judy had been very quiet in that lunch initially, and Dennis was doing most of the talking, which is kind of normal because he's very affable and outgoing. But I really wanted to just hear from Judy if this was something she felt okay with me going forward with. And I shared just this poem. I didn't bring any music. I didn't bring anything else, but just the poem of Hafiz, which was kind of exactly what Shiela had referenced, this sense of Matt sort of singing. And I said, this is what I would have imagined if Matt's soul could have sung that evening, looking up at the sky, what his heart and soul might have expressed. And it was a kind of a wordless exchange from there at the moment. She read it and brought tears. And then she just handed across the table her business card and wrote her cell phone. And she said, I want you to do this. Call me anytime. And so it was kind of through poetry that this project was blessed. She didn't know Adam Jack about me, So anyway, it was rich.
Yeah. Leslea, is this the first time that any of your poems have been set to music by a composer?
So actually the whole book, October Morning, a song from Matthew Shepard, was set to music, which was kind of an amazing experience by I can't remember his name at the moment. It was a long time ago, but he was a high school music teacher who had never composed anything in his life. And so, and it was in Indiana, and I flew out there and saw that, and that was amazing. And I would love that to go somewhere because it was so magnificent. But I have to say that I saw Considering Matthew Shepard with Judy Shepard. We sat together in Boston, and before, and actually I was also sitting with my Aunt Judy, so I was surrounded by Judys, and Judy, I asked Judy Shepard, what do you need? How is this going to be for you? And she said, I need to sit in the back. I need to sit on the aisle, and I need you to know I might leave. And just, you can stay, whatever. But she sat through the whole thing. We were both crying, and afterwards we went out for a drink. And she was very, very moved by it. And I know that she, and actually myself, we put the grand kibosh on a lot of things, that just don't feel right. In fact, I was just asked to be a part of a project, and I know that Judy and Shepard declined that after many months of starting to negotiate, and I will probably decline as well, because if something doesn't sit right with them, there's got to be a reason, and it's not going to sit right with me. So that's just a testament and a tribute to the power of Craig's work, because they really give their blessings to very few things.
Shiela,
which is understandable.
Yeah. Shiela, let's talk a little bit about some of the people involved in this. Who are the DeCamera singers? Where are they from? And you've got a group of people that you've brought together as instrumentalists and narrators. Who are some of the people involved in the project?
DeCamera Singers is an adult chamber choir, amateur chamber choir, and next year actually will be the 50th anniversary of its being together. It's in the Valley, the Five College Valley, and honestly, it was started by professors and their spouses, their partners, who wanted to sing madrigals together. And then Ann Kern, who was the director of the choral program at Hampshire College at the time, they asked her to come on board and help give them some guidance, and it just grew from there. And we still have 4 members in the group who are original members, which is really wonderful. And I will be very honest and say this is a group of people who our hair is mostly white. And, these are people who are not spring chickens. And my license plate is the letter 2, and then the capital T, and the SING. So it means tutti, sing. Tutti is the Italian word for all. And I just believe everybody should sing. And so this is a group of people who wanted to keep singing, and they can, and they work, and they do beautifully, and they're happy, and they love to be together in community. And they love to take on some, big projects, little projects and big projects. I've been with them now for, I think, 17 years, and they've done the B minor mass, and we've also done, a concert about crazy things with silly texts and madrigals, chant, and everything. Last fall, I set them up for a lot of the pieces that are in this beautiful work by having us do chant from the, Renaissance and medieval periods and things like that. So they work hard and they're wonderful. As we looked at it, the thing that I love about Craig Keller Johnson's generosity is that right in the book at the beginning it says, do this with narrators from your group. Do this if you can't do all the pieces. Choose the pieces if you need to drop some pieces. Do it. He has made a work that is accessible for amateur groups on such a profound topic, which is not always the case, and given permission essentially to be able to do it as you can, what's capable, and encourages you not to necessarily be hiring fabulous soloists or things like that. And though I will say here in Western Massachusetts, we have some pretty amazing people. And so I took liberty, I hope you will forgive me for bringing in narrators from outside of the group. One of our narrators is Stan Rosenberg, who was in the Massachusetts State Senate for many years and was the architect for the Equality Marriage Act that Massachusetts passed, and was the first state to pass it. And then that was the precedent on which Barack Obama's work was done his judicial system that made it possible for the federal government to make a similar statement. So it seemed his voice should be there. And we have Jill Kaufman, who's an NPR speaker, person who does a program on our radio, FCR, and she was very involved in things in Boston and did a lot of talkbacks around the time that Matthew Shepard's murder happened. We have Mark Auerbach, who's sitting at the microphone there, and the director of international admissions at Northfield Mount Hermon School, just to bring in as much diversity as we possibly could.
So it's quite an arrangement of people with backgrounds and experiences. And again, this program is on May 21st at 4 o'clock at Greenfield High School. And what's the website, Shiela, for people to get information?
It's real easy, dacamera-singers.org.
Terrific.
And if I may, Mark, I forgot one really important person who's also narrating, and that is Bill Newman, who is a very important lawyer for the civil rights, the ACLU, and has been doing amazing work in Massachusetts as well.
And he has his own radio program on WHMP every weekday. So I listen to a lot of his stuff. He's great.
Bill was also instrumental. He was vetted the manuscript for me, which my publisher asked me for legal purposes and, just to make sure everything was kosher. And so he read the poems multiple times and got very involved in my publication. So that's another connection that Bill has.
Terrific. We're going to take another break to acknowledge our underwriters, and we'll be back more to chat about Considering Matthew Shepard. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. Don't go away.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield. Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
Join me, Tina Gorman, each week from 6 to 8 a.m. for Wake Up Wednesday, when my guests and I discuss health, wellness, and lifestyle reimagined.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. We're chatting with Craig Hellett Johnson, Leslea Newman, and Shiela Heffernon. All are involved in Craig's music piece called Considering Matthew Shepard, coming to Greenfield High School, courtesy of DeCamera Singers, on May 21st. It dawned on me, driving out to the studio this morning, that if Matthew Shepard were alive today, he would be probably in his mid to late 40s. And I wonder what he might have accomplished. He was a very talented student. He had a lot of potential in all of that. And it also dawned on me that his parents, Matthew and Judy Shepard, took a tragedy and turned it into a triumph because their tireless work on behalf of human rights and gay rights and legislation against hate crimes has done more. Those two people, in the sacrifice of their child, have done more than any people I can think of to advance so many programs in this country. And they need to be applauded and revered every single day. So I just wanted to put that out there. You have all met them. I have not, but I just have so much admiration for people who can take tragedy and turn it into a triumph and all of that. And the big lesson, or the takeaway that I get every time I talk about Matthew Shepard or considering Matthew Shepard, is the same lesson that I learned when, as a reporter, I covered the opening of the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., and realized that if we don't tell these stories of what happened, this could all happen again. And there's a rise of homophobic crimes and prejudice and things like that. We have to remember that we cannot allow a Matthew Shepard crime to take place again. It's essential. So anyway, here's an opportunity for you to experience a world-class piece of music and musical theater. And it really is musical theater more than just a concert style piece of music that tells an important story. But hopefully you'll walk out of the concert hall afterwards and think, how can I prevent this from happening again? So the performance is May 21st at Greenfield High School, produced by DeCamera Singers. And again, it is free and open to the public, and all you have to do is show up. It's at 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. Leslea, what projects are you working on right now? Because you've got a couple of books that just came out.
I do, and I'm so glad you asked. So I am continuing my exploration of gender freedom with two children's books, The Fairest in the Land and I Can Be Me. And since you brought up Babka, which I had for breakfast this morning, I have a book called The Babka Sisters, which just came out. But really, I'm most excited because I have another book about Matthew Shepard coming out this fall. And it's called Always Matt, a tribute to Matthew Shepard. And while October Morning really focused on the hate crime that took his life and all of that, this book, Always Matt, is a tribute to his life and legacy, talks more about his life and uplifts the people who have worked so hard to make the world a better place in his memory, such as his parents, of course, and Moises Kaufman and Reverend Gene Robinson and President Obama and the 11 people who created Angel Action, etc. It's a book-length poem. It's beautifully illustrated. There's a foreword by Jason Collins, and it also ends with a call to action. So that is going to be published this September, and I hope to have a lot of local events around that. And thank you for asking.
And you have a website and a Facebook presence where people can learn about what you're doing, right?
That is correct. My website's just my name, LesleaNewman.com. And that's the same with Facebook, Twitter account, all that jazz.
And Craig, what kind of work have you composed and done since you composed this in 2016?
A lot of shorter things. I'm kind of and I wrote about a 25-minute work called Lantern, which is yet to be premiered, but we're still sorting out when that can happen. And then we have been commissioning a lot as a conductor. We just, I think Conspire is now premiered, I think 19 commissions in the last probably 6 to 7 months. So we've been busy supporting the work of others and trying to really bring a lot of less sort of underrepresented voices out into our musical world more. So been busy with that, and yeah.
Where are you based?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. Okay. And Shiela, you do DeCamera Singers and a whole bunch of other things, but you recently retired from Northfield Mount Hermon, where you ran a music program that just, the school is known for its, however many years it's been around, is known for its excellence in music, and you just catapulted it to another level. What are you doing besides DeCamera Singers?
I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm doing a lot of things that you can't do when you live and work at a boarding school and work 15-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week. So yes, so I'm taking some time, I will be honest, to be a grandmother. I have a granddaughter in Austin, by the way, Craig.
Cool.
Yeah, but also the other thing I'm doing is diving into all the repertoire that has been composed by people like Craig over the last 10 or so years. I tried as much as I could to be doing that because I was always trying to bring music that represents not just the classical things that a lot of people do, but variety of different cultures, because that school has a population that is 38% international students, in addition to, students of color. So we were trying to do that. So I'm in a learning place, which is really, really exciting.
How did you discover the piece Considering Matthew Shepard? Did somebody tell you about it, or did you hear it somewhere? Where did the connection happen?
So I'm a Spotify listener, and one of them, and based on the things that I'd been listening to, one of the movements showed up, and you might like this, and so I listened to it, and which is what I was referring to earlier. Then I did find me. I went to the Trinity Wall Street performance in person in New York last fall, because I felt it was really important to know what it would be like to experience it live as a member of the audience. That was just such a compelling, amazing performance.
And Leslea, you've seen it or heard it a number of times, right?
Yes, including the world premiere in Austin.
Okay. When you go back on your repeat visits to see a concert production of it, does it change in your mind? Do you say, are there new aha moments? You go, I didn't catch that the first time around, or, oh, I never thought my words would sound like this musically.
Well, first of all, it's really more like having an experience than attending a conference. I mean, it's so, the music just enters your soul, and at least for me, and just puts me in a completely different place. It like takes me to another plane from really the first note. So it's just incredibly powerful. And I think, the first time I heard it was extraordinary, just to hear my words set to music like that. And I really do not have a lot of experience with choral music, actually none until this. So it was, complete. I had no expectations, which is, I think, a good way to go into any experience. So I was just completely moved and overwhelmed. And that's how I feel every time I hear it. I don't really... I think what surprises me the most is, even though I'm so familiar with it now, it still is just as emotionally effective every single time.
Did you realize, I know you write in prose as well as poetry, but did you realize that your poems had the musical rhythms and cadences to them that make it easy for me as a narrator, it's so easy for me to read because the rhythms and the emotions are wrapped up in the words, and it's very kind of a living piece of literature, which I don't get when I read poetry generally.
Oh, I love to think of it as a living piece of literature. Yes, I'm very conscious of sound and rhythm and meter and rhyme and line length and all of that. I mean, I really have studied formal poetry intensely, and I feel like sometimes the sound takes precedent over the meaning. Because it's, poetry is an oral tradition. It's supposed to be read out loud. I love when it's sung. And yes, I'm very aware of all of those things.
Yeah, for me, learning the script that for my part in it, which is it's a very short thing, but when I took your book and I took it with me to Wyoming, I was reading it on the plane. I tend to read poems like I might read lyrics to musical theater out loud. I think the person sitting next to me thought that I should probably be taken off the plane in Denver and carted off somewhere. But it has a natural rhythm and a cadence. And I read your words before I listened to the music that Craig composed. And and in my mind, when I heard the music, the rhythms were already there in my brain from reading it.
Well, the English language is so rich. I mean, why do we have words like under and below, for example? They mean the same thing, but they have a completely different sound and a completely different rhythm. So, I'm just very conscious every word is chosen specifically. And that's a lot for sound.
Craig, when you write a piece like Considering Matthew Shepard, and you're inspired by the libretto and the words, does the music come first, or do you see the words first?
It's both and everything in between. But yeah, I think in the case of Leslea's poems, it's so fun to think of them because I just, several lines come immediately, but just, in the fence poem where the fence is, holding Matt's body the 19 hours that he was tied there and by himself. And, these words, I held him all night long. I cradled him like a mother, just those are words and a flow of a phrase and rhythm and shape. They're just like begging to be sung, And so, talk about living, they really come off the page like, So, but yeah, there were so many. It's always difficult, as any creative knows, and Leslea knows this as a writer. The process is always fulsome, challenging, and demands so much. But to the extent that one can say this, her poems made my work easy, and yeah, in other ways, I've also had fun sometimes. Michael Dennis Brown, who wrote some texts for this too, he had worked many years with Stephen Paulus, and he'd sort of, who's a writer and poet of sort of a librettist of a different sort, really, because they'd collaborated so much that he had kind of put on the cap of what I do is build words for music. So I mean, I've never encountered anyone quite to the degree that he has that sort of readiness to say. He wrote a book, a collection of these lyrics and texts called "Build Me a Boat," actually sort of sharing what his process became. I don't think he went into this at all thinking this was going to be his life, but his dear friend Stephen Paulus was a composer, so they were so close, and so he just began thinking in this way. And so I would send him some things. It just like, here's what I want the music to sound like. This is the rhythm of the phrase that I'd like to shape. These are the ideas. Can you go to town on that? And he has fun with that. So it was kind of a backwards way in that way, but yeah, I'd love to try that with Leslea sometime.
Love it. Sure.
Yeah, I know you're up for it. So you get the
absolutely.
Yeah. Are there, Craig? Are there any composers or lyricists that have inspired you as you've become a composer yourself?
Endless list, a long list. I mean, I think the poets themselves are the ones where I get the most inspiration, even before I would say composers, because that's sort of the living music for me. And I'm surprised that I'm saying that in a way, because I'm not sort of a, anyway, I won't go down this rabbit hole. So I'll just be simpler in my response to say, I think many poets inspire me first, and then I loved the kind of hybrid mutts, kind of like I am. I'm got really deep roots and classical training, but I think coming out of my mother's womb, I wanted to be anyway destined for the stage and kind of love musical theater, and I love these kind of hybrid folks who write and play. And I mean, certainly Stephen Sondheim's the greatest of them, but Jason Robert Brown. I mean, there's so many, and so they inspire me a lot. And the folks who can kind of travel between these worlds, I find it interesting. It's nice for my Gemini spirit too. I kind of need to pop over here and then here. So, yeah, but it's a beautiful world we live in. There's so much inspiration. Yeah.
And Leslea, do you like the collaborative effort when you work with a composer like this? Is this something that if you had more time and more funding available, that you might be writing music or musical theater?
Well, I grew up going to Broadway shows. I grew up in New York, and it's really a true love of mine. But, Craig and I, we didn't really work together in the way I think you're suggesting. I mean, he took my poems and ran with them, and there's no greater compliment to me as a poet and artist than having another artist feel so inspired that they want to put their mark on my work and develop it further. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm really open to anything. So, and actually right now I have a couple of things have ended for me. So I'm in this place where there's a little bit of a openness and vacuum in my life. And I know nature abhors a vacuum, right? So I'm waiting to see what is going to come along and fill it. And it's a little terrifying, but it's mostly an exciting place.
And you've always got at least 2 or 3 projects going at one time. So do you actually, once the book the next book comes out in September, do you get a rest, or are there more projects lined up after that?
Oh no, there is no rest. I have more projects coming out after that. I'm thrilled that I actually have 3 picture books coming out that have overt Jewish and LGBTQ content. And it's taken all these years. I have Jewish children's books, I have LGBTQ children's books, and finally I'm being able to bring the 2 together. One book is about a 2-mom family celebrating Shabbat, and one book is about a 2-dad family celebrating Shabbat. And one book is a story about a family with 2 moms and a little boy who are welcoming a new baby into the family, and they bring her to shul on the first Shabbat of her life for a naming ceremony. So that is thrilling to me.
And Craig, how many commissions and performances do you have coming up, or do you get a break?
Yeah, same. I mean, I want to break a lot, and I'm really good at relaxing, but I just never get to do it. And yeah, it's a busy time, and there are many. It's a busy next year and a half is kind of scheduled out a bit, but yeah, but I'm feeling excited about all that's ahead too. And this summer we're gonna have a couple of weeks to take a trip here and there, so looking forward to that. But yeah, no, the exchange we get to do, and I think about sort of what Leslea is doing, the work I get to do. Sheila, it's so good to get to know where you're at in your journey too, but we're here to make a contribution, right, to this human family, to this global thing we're doing here, and that's what I love. Every time I hear something, some new awful government legislation in Florida or in my home state here in Texas or whatever, I think, oh, Leslea's up there cranking out beautiful new contributions to balance this. And I think it's what we're all kind of about, is just bringing love into the world through these creative efforts.
I would agree. Shiela, once this performance happens on May 21st, what's on your calendar after that?
Well, on my calendar, I did retire from teaching. And as this project got going and we saw the possibilities for how we could bring in, other teenagers to start learning the story about Mad, and, making sure that story gets told, and the possibilities, the project just balloons as they do. I'm sure you both know that. So I will be honest that when you were just saying about traveling a little bit this summer, I think what will be in store is a bit of rest and just being able to start figuring out what does it mean to be retired, and what is the next step, which will certainly be informed by what's going on, and how do we leverage. I guess for me, the question now, particularly because I don't have a platform anymore. When I was teaching and I had adolescents, I had a place where I could make sure I could inspire activism, or I could be doing my own work and challenging myself to learn and grow. And so it's kind of great to be in a place where I have to now figure out how to continue doing that, because as you just pointed out, Craig, we so desperately need to, right?
Indeed. Before we run, let me just recap everything. Considering Matthew Shepard is I want to call it a musical theater piece because this is primarily a theater show. And those of you that go to Broadway or go to theater or go to concerts, it's a fusion of a lot of different musical styles. And it is called Considering Matthew Shepard. It's based on historical fact. It utilizes some of the writings of our very own local author and poet, Leslea Newman. It reaches into the trial transcripts. It reaches into news stories and reports of the time to take the story of Matthew Shepard, which is a horrific hate crime, and turn it into something positive where people can learn that tolerance and acceptance and respect is critical. And if one thing that the arts can do through entertainment, it can inform and educate and give people a different perspective. And Shiela Heffernon is bringing this work to Western Massachusetts May 21st at Greenfield High School, courtesy of DeCamera Singers. A group of singers, there's some musical instrumentalists, along with some narrators from the community, and I am thrilled and honored to be a part of that. So you can get information at decamerasingers.org. And I want to thank my three guests this morning on Artsbeat, Craig Hella Johnson, Leslea Newman, and Shiela Heffernon. And we're going to leave you today with a little bit of piece of music here from Considering Matthew Shepard. And it'll give you just a little bit of a taste of, it's called Passion 5, The Fence. And it'll give you a little bit of a taste of what you might expect. And this wraps up another edition of Artsbeat. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. We'll see you next week with another all-new Artsbeat.
Prairie, the moon bathes me, the stars bless me, the sun warms me, the wind soothes me. I wonder, I wonder, will I always be out here exposed and alone? Will I ever know why I was put here on this earth? Will somebody someday stumble upon me? Will anyone remember me after I'm gone? Still, 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 I wonder. Still, 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 I wonder, will I always be out here exposed and alone? Will anyone remember me after I'm gone? I wonder.